This video is for business leaders who seek to continuously improve their own skills and those of their team towards mastery. Watch to the end of this video for bonus material about useful EQ mindsets and a recommended video, which is Progress, Not Perfection. It's also sort of a mindset piece. So this is actually part 3 of an ongoing series. This is actually part 3 of a 4-part series based on my original 2-part article and book review of Robert Greene's book, Mastering. I'll put links here probably to the original and also something else. So I would recommend, this is independent or stands alone. You'll find that out in a second. So essentially, read this book if you want a clear understanding of how to master anything. This isn't a superficial, easy answer. This is a pretty realistic look at it. In fact, the most realistic look I have ever seen in book form. But at the same time, feel free to ignore most of the Machiavellian worldviews and pseudoscientific misrepresentations and speculations that he also conveys in this book. Robert Greene is, and he can contact me if he wants, pathological. He has what indicates, now I'm not a personality specialist, but I do have a background in psychology. He definitely indicates signs that suggest that he is sociopathic and paranoid. This is my opinion, and it's not a professional opinion, but it's a well-educated opinion. So now if you prefer continuity and order, you may want to start with the part 1 of this book review. I will put in the description, I will put the link to the original article. That's part 1 of a 2-part in the original article, and right here, as well as in the description for the 2nd part of the video series. So either way, if you want to start at part 1, please go do that. This does stand alone. In other words, if you, this part, which is the 2nd part, it focuses on the last 2/3 of this book, is separate and talks virtually not at all about the first third of the book, which is covered in the first 2 of the video series, or the first part 1 of the article series, if you prefer to read it. The video is actually better because I've updated it and I've improved it, because why do anything a second time at an equal level when you have the capability of doing it better? Thus is the essence of mastery. So let me start by saying that I think everyone who aspires to achieve mastery should listen to or read this book. And the reason I focus on listening first rather than reading is because almost a decade ago, perhaps now, I realized that listening is a superior option if you want to consume more books in less time, because you can listen to a book and walk and watch out for cars. There are so many things. You can wash dishes and listen to a book. Reading a book and washing dishes is rather more difficult. So in terms of covering, consuming more knowledge in less time, or more knowledge in the same time, listening to books is a superior option in most cases. But that being covered, I also refuse to candy coat the many things I feel Greene gets, in simple terms, twisted and completely wrong, and I will be covering those as well. Overall, he still gives the most sober perspective of the time, work, and commitment that the path to mastery demands. Most people, they do some candy-coated article, or some bullshit artist who pretends to be an expert about this talks about how, oh, I did something an hour a week, an hour a day for a month, and I'm a master. Bullshit. Nobody becomes a master of anything in a month, except maybe a master of doing a talk that is full of shit. So Greene also, unfortunately, in the first third of the book, it wasn't apparent, but he lets out his paranoid Machiavellian views from about the middle of the book onwards, and it progressively starts to resemble the same sort of fundamental mistrust of people as human beings that he describes in his book, 48 Laws of Power. I have listened to both, and he has a fundamentally paranoid, everybody is sort of out to get you and screw you over perspective of the world, and it is not based on fact. And yet, he states as fact, rather than an acknowledgement of his own paranoid assumptions, that people are scheming against you, whether it's true or not. So, that view is a deeply pathological, misguided belief, not based on empirical data. In his words, and these are his exact words, the world is one large court of intrigue. He seems to confuse some of his own experiences, and there are shitty people out there, with the royal courts of past eras, of which he describes in the 48 Laws of Power. And I believe it's been a long time since I wrote this original article, about a year ago, that he also talks about in here. We are not the French royal court, and most people don't think like people in the French royal court. I prefer a less cynical and pathological, but more realistic take from Ann Landers' 1992 Gem of the Day. And I'll put that in the description. I cannot put that in the tags here because I don't have enough subscribers yet to be able to put custom tags, only tags to other YouTube videos. So I'll put it in the description. And here's the quote from that. At age 20, we worry about what others think of us. At age 40, we don't care what they think of us. At age 60, we discover they haven't been thinking of us at all. That is the reality. That's from Ann Landers' Gem of the Day, and that's the truth. Most people are, at their core, are too self-interested to spend their brain space scheming like members of a socially dysfunctional royal court to scheme against you. They're just worried about their own lives and what people think about them and all that sort of thing, to do any of the nonsense that Robert Greene thinks is the rule of the world and is not. If you doubt this, ask yourself, how much time do you spend scheming about all the other people in your life, your friends, your coworkers? I personally basically spend no time doing that. So maybe if you do, you might want to go get a psychological assessment. So the next one, he basically says that while it's good that some people with homeland security levels of paranoia, this is actually from, oh, I missed something here. Let me do this again. So in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers, he addresses this issue sort of about a really paranoid perspective on the world. And Gladwell in his book says that while it's good, some people have a homeland security level of paranoia, and they will catch the few real plots that actually exist. He also acknowledges that society probably couldn't function if most people thought that way. So if you work for Homeland Security and you're paranoid that everybody does it, thank you. Your life is probably crap as a result, but there are a few real evil people out there plotting revenge against the world, but they are the minority in most scenarios. But thank you for your service, Homeland Security and other paranoid and more or less mentally ill organizations who have to deal with that. Thank you that you do that so that the rest of us don't have to. So Greene's perspective reminds me of Littlefinger's game in which he imagines the worst possible motivations behind what people do or say. So essentially what he says is, imagine the worst possible reason somebody would say that. That's basically the game. Now, I'll also put a link. Fortunately, this is a YouTube video, so I will put the link right here so that you can watch that little clip. It's actually pretty cool. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you might recall it. So essentially, to get insight from somebody who really understands social dynamics, intelligence, and EQ well, check out this video about Littlefinger's paranoid Machiavellian manipulations, throughout the Game of Thrones, and I'll put it there too because it's another YouTube video by Charlie of Charisma on Command, who is a brilliant guy and has great videos. I would highly recommend them to anybody. I am not an affiliate. We are not affiliated. It's just I give credit where it's due. So EQ is not about viewing people's nature realistically or accurately. And many of Greene's stated assumptions about people, why people behave in certain ways, has nothing to do with reality as such. He has a deeply paranoid perspective, and I am not, as you can tell, sugarcoating that. So really, that's what it comes down to. Greene, Robert Greene, the author of this book, Mastery, is fundamentally paranoid to a level which I would personally characterize as pathological. And that's it for that part. Thank you and welcome to the bonus material, which starts now. So EQ is mostly about knowing the best ways to behave and respond in real time during social interactions. That is not pre-rehearsed, but understanding in a social situation what the best thing or the most appropriate thing to do is for yourself, but more to the point in the interaction to keep it moving in a positive direction or in a way that works for the people involved in it. So this perspective, his perspective, I'm going to jump back to Robert Greene now, is essentially dangerously unlikely to cause anyone who adopts it to be deeply unhappy and paranoid. That is Greene's perspective. Sorry for bouncing around, but that's the way it is. It happened because of the way I wrote the text. Sorry about that. But if you have Greene's pathological paranoid perspective, you're probably paranoid and unhappy and worried about everybody else. So now let's talk about some different things, though. Choosing instead to assume benevolent intent while remaining mindful that some people are malevolent is a much better path for you to be happy and maintain mental health. Now, this would be supported by Adam Grant's book, Give and Take. Yeah, some people are not nice people, but by and large, by having that perspective, it's better for you. And on balance, according to his own research and the research he cites in that book, Give and Take, assuming positive intent has a lot of advantages. And also Charlie, the guy I mentioned before on Charisma on Command, talks about the positive social dynamic aspects of assuming positive intent when you hear something and it's ambiguous as to what the intent really is. So what's ironic, and we're going back to Robert Greene now, about much of Robert Greene's advice is about being focused on others, not your feelings about their behaviors or character. That is, instead of making judgments about why other people say things and why basically the opposite of his own perspective, instead of focusing on your feelings about people's behavior or your assumptions or judgments of somebody else's character, he says, don't do that. Focus on what other people are doing without judgment. He says to accept unconditionally, this is Robert Greene now, without necessarily condoning behavior, that behavior and character as they are. That's good advice. So in other words, somebody says something you realize that you find unethical or inappropriate or whatever else, suspend that or put that to the side. You don't have to condone or agree with the way they behave, but accept what they say unconditionally and without judgment for your own purposes, so you don't get emotional about it and get clouded by the judgment that that would probably cause. He basically gives many other socially intelligent gems. Again, we're talking about Robert Greene here, but he is also full of disturbing assumptions about others' intentions and motivations. Now, this might seem contradictory, but that's what it is. Greene in this book, Mastery, repeatedly, and I have now listened to at least two or completely two books, which is mastery, and the 48 laws of power. And a third one, and I can't remember which it was, but I actually stopped listening because it was the same shit, different pile. Him being deeply and disturbingly paranoid about other people's intentions or motivations, after giving the opposite advice, which is don't judge people on their intentions, motivation, or character, but observe and accept it so that you can judge it accurately. So he shows the personality traits of a sociopath, that is, by generally emotionally distancing yourself from anything that's happening, no matter how morally reprehensible it may be. And yet he himself repeatedly, over every book that I've listened to, now 3, always talks about the Machiavellian intent and motivations of others. So he's also contradicted in himself, not just pathologically paranoid and Machiavellian. So really what this comes down to, or my perspective on what this comes down to, is the intent. You can suspend judgment because you don't know for a fact what people are thinking and why people do things. But the intent matters. Accept people unconditionally as who they are is healthy and adaptive for you. So this is actually the end of this part, which is part 3 of 4 of Robert Greene's book, Mastery. This is part 3. And I have one more thing, which I've already talked about, which is the bonus video. And the bonus video is Progress, Not Perfection. This is my own video. It's about the mindset that mastery is something that is normally achieved by people who have the perspective that they're not finished, that they're always striving for progress rather than perfection. I forgot to do something in this video. What you see here is a friend of mine. I'll give you his performance name is Tumaya the Wizard. I took this photograph myself, so I know I can use it. Who is a contact juggler. He is just like my nephew Matthew, which, well, what the heck, I'll show you now if I can. I'm going to switch the picture so you can see what it looks like. Let's see here, going to my own thing here. I'm going to add an image. Now, this is the image of somebody. Also, I only know 2 living masters, and this would be the second one. This guy here is my nephew, Matthew. He is a world-ranked, yet retired, not only a Cirque du Soleil performer, but a world-ranked international tumbler, Canadian junior men's tumbling champion. And this is a young version of me. The reason I'm showing you both of these pictures is both of these guys are, number one, real life masters. They have spent their lives getting excellent at something. The picture you just saw, Tumaya the Wizard and his contact juggling, every time I talk to him, over now at least a decade between the first time I met him and the second time I saw him in 2012, which was the last time I spoke to him, 10 years ago now. What are you up to, Tumaya? I'm not going to give you his real name. You can find it if you can find it. Oh, I'm still spending almost every moment of my day, the vast majority of my day, practicing contact juggling. This guy, Matt Dial, his name is very public, it's out there, who is my nephew, from young childhood, was better at doing, I've never done a backflip in my life, but from young childhood, 6 or 8 years old, until he was at least in his early 20s to probably early 30s, spent almost every day, and in Cirque du Soleil, spent 6 days a week practicing his craft as a tumbler. And both of them have another weird thing in common besides being really nice human beings, really nice guys. And I'm not saying that to flatter them. It's just the truth. It's the truth about these 2 people. They are also 2 of the most exceptionally humble people I have ever met in my life. And this goes to the point of the video I just talked about, which is progress, not perfection. Most people who truly master something aren't all that impressed with themselves. They're like, yeah, I'm better than some people, or I'm even better than most people, but I'm still trying to get better. So that's it. That's the end of this. As I said, this is Crush It Club 236, Mastery by Robert Greene, book review, part 3 of 4. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.